Hey guys, Dr. Steph here from Living Health Integrative Medicine, and today we're going to be talking about where parasites can take up residence in our bodies. The previous two videos we talked about what a parasite is, the different types of parasites, and how we can get parasites. Obviously, you don't have to leave your home state and go anywhere exotic or fancy to pick up parasites. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of parasites that we can get just living here at home. We can get a mosquito bite and get parasites. We can eat salad and get parasites. We can eat meat and get parasites. It's not just raw fish. We can drink treated water in our city and potentially get parasites. You can walk barefoot on a beach and get parasites. You can garden and get parasites. You can have domestic pets and get parasites. There's lots of different ways of us contracting parasites. So today we're going to talk about where these things can set up shop. They may not cause really acute, severe symptoms. Most of the crazy cases are the ones that make the news and become a case study that's published. But there are so many known chronic illnesses that are related to a chronic infestation that is just living in you for decades and contributing to poor health. Even, things like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue can be associated with parasites. So it's not just this crazy, cases sometimes that get reported. So where can they set up shop? Well, pretty much anywhere and everywhere. So, if you ever watch, there's some great TV series on parasites. You can go on YouTube and look at all the craziness. They can get it into any tissue in the body. Most people, let me just move myself out of the way here for a second. So most people, it's intestinal. It's very, very common. Roundworms love the small intestines. The colon, flukes or flatworms, again, love the intestines. Protozoan like Giardia love Entamoeba histolytica. These are common parasites that love the intestines. They can also get into the pancreas and the liver. There's definite research published on these findings where they have performed, gallbladder surgeries, taken out gallbladders, and they find large flukes in the gallbladder or the larvae. They've even cracked open stones and found larvae in the stones, so they can exist anywhere. There are countries that have documented issues with flukes even existing in utero. So uterine flukes in some of the younger population in Africa, for example, exist. So we know that flukes can pretty much exist anywhere. Microfilarial worms, which are microscopic thread worms that can be transmitted through a mosquito bite, can cross into the blood-brain barrier and end up setting shop in the brain. Post-mortem autopsies have shown this as well. This was a fairly recent article that I posted here, still alive and wriggling. Doctors removed a 3-inch parasitic worm from a woman's brain in world first. This was in 2023. So again, this is the stuff that makes the news all the way from Australia. So this woman started getting severe neurologic symptoms, and this was about a year and a half or something after she had some severe GI issues. And around the GI issues, she was eating some vegetation that may have been excremented on by a snake indigenous to that area, and the snake transmitted a roundworm larvae that's indigenous, like that's common for that snake, and she ingested the larvae, and the larvae ended up in her brain, and the worm, which is pictured in the slide, was actually taken out of her brain live. So when they initially did the brain scan on the left and they found that there was some kind of growth that was likely contributing to her severe neurologic symptoms, they chose to surgically go in. And when they surgically went in, the doctors were like completely shocked that there was this wriggling living worm that was actually in her brain. So they can get anywhere. Did it want to be in this girl's brain? No. But they can make a wrong turn, you know, they're just kind of going along, and the next thing you know, they end up setting up shop and trapped. Oftentimes, if they end up crossing the blood-brain barrier into the central nervous system, they're trapped there. Once they start developing into an adult, they're too big to get out. So if the larvae is small enough to pass through the blood-brain barrier and they become adults, or they're microscopic tiny threadworms. These are microscopic filarial worms. Again, they can get into tissues in the brain throughout the cerebrospinal fluid, contribute to all kinds of central nervous system issues, and the next thing you know, you've got some crazy disease happening, and the worms are just in the brain. There have been reports of parasites that get into the kidneys. There are certain flukes and flatworms that are named after where they generally prefer to be. So there's lung flukes, there's intestinal flukes, there's liver flukes. And so worms can pretty much end up anywhere. But certain worms prefer to be in certain locations in the body because it depends on if they're a larvae. So larvae of roundworm, for example, will often move through the blood to feed off the blood before they become an adult, and then you will cough them up. So a dry, non-productive cough is often a sign that you might have a parasite infestation. And when you cough them up, then you swallow them, and then they end up in the intestines where they want to be as an adult. So it depends on also where they are in their life cycle in terms of where they'll end up. But they can accidentally literally end up anywhere. So as you can see the picture in the top right of this slide, there are situations where the larvae might have burrowed in somewhere through the skin and ended up actually setting up shop under the skin, and you can see it can pretty much end up anywhere. So even in the mouth, people don't realize that our cavitations in the mouth, cavities, root canals. So the root canal is a tooth that is no longer alive. It doesn't have a blood flow anymore. It doesn't have the immune system anymore. It's basically a dead vessel, and it's protected by a crown. And larvae, bacteria, yeast, fungus can get in through the porous tooth at the edge of where the crown meets the gum, and the next thing you know, it's setting up shop in there. Oftentimes what we will find is areas where people have had teeth extracted, especially wisdom teeth. If the tooth was not pulled in its entirety, or if any ligament was left or soft tissue resides, then what can happen is an abscess can form. A lot of people have this and don't have pain, don't have direct symptoms in that area, but there are small enteric or intestinal protozoa, unicelled parasites, in addition to bacteria, yeast, and fungus that can reside in the jaw where we had wisdom teeth pulled. And we'll talk about how that can be tested for and how that can be handled in later webinar. But people don't realize that a lot of stuff can collect in the mouth and can actually cause chronic issues elsewhere in the body. Everything is connected. So what are the symptoms of a parasite infestation? What we'll do is we're going to end the video here. It was a short little video, and we're going to talk about the symptoms and how parasite infestations can present more commonly than not. And so we'll talk about that in our next video.